morning, everyone. Welcome to Zen Minded Men. We're your hosts. I'm Sensei Art Gully.
I'm Sensei Vince Ellis.
And first of all, we want to thank you all for tuning in. We've got a lot of positive feedback. And Sensei Ellis had this idea for the two of us, we're longtime friends and martial artists, to come together and discuss a lot of issues and basically talk about how we use our training, what we've used in our training to navigate through life. So without further ado, Vince, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, again, what are the benefits of martial arts off the mat?
Mhm.
I think most people have a view of martial art, whatever that art may be, and the physical attributes. But as we've been introduced to from the beginning, it's 90% mental, 10% physical most of the time. So
Right,
for every one thing that you see, there's nine things that you don't.
right.
And there's a lot of life lessons that are learned in the dojo and that you take off the mat and help you navigate through your everyday life. The
This is true.
dojo in a good traditional school should be a microcosm of society.
I agree.
So, you should be able to confront a lot of situations in the dojo in a controlled environment and almost role play or at least apply those lessons
Hmm.
to situations that you're going to get into uh, in your home, in your workplace, wherever that may be.
Yeah,
One of the things, we just after our first episode, we noticed looking back, we were a little bit, you know, here and there. So just trying to tighten it up a little bit. Um, One of the things that I try to stress with my students, and I think just in general in our society right now, that we're losing grips on is accountability.
definitely. Yeah.
And
Who's responsible for what actions? And you're right, because everyone is into the blame game, or everyone is into the, well, it's not my problem game, or there's no accountability from anything. When you look at society, from kids in school to celebrities to politicians to our law enforcement, I mean, accountability has become one of those things where if you didn't see me, I don't really have to, own up to it. And if you did see me, well, there was a reason. There's always a reason. Remember way back, the president, I believe it was Eisenhower. Correct me if I'm wrong. The sign on his desk, it said, "The buck stops here."
yes,
And we've lost sight of the buck stopping anywhere. Now, as a parent and as a dad, and I know you're accountable to this, to me, the buck stops with me when it comes down to it. The responsibility of the house, it's like, okay, the buck stops here. I cannot have excuses. If this happened, this is because it happened. If this happened, this is because it happened. If I let this happen, if the heat gets cut off, it's because I didn't pay the bill. Doesn't matter the reason, I didn't pay the bill. In the dojo, we learned that if you get hit in the head, you didn't put your hand up, regardless of how fast the other person was, whatever. You didn't follow the techniques you were learned. You didn't follow the principles of movement one, blocking, and then ducking if necessary. You let yourself get hit in the head. It was just that simple. In life, if something comes at you, you can't control what comes at you, but you can control your reaction to it. You can hold yourself accountable for the things that go on in your life, you know? And I think that society as a whole, we're not looking for accountability in anything anymore. Everybody wants to point the blame so they can feel a little bit better about their feelings.
exactly. And again, going back to, as you mentioned, the household, society's different. I understand a little bit, and honestly, I think your household and my household are unfortunately not the norm, um,
Yeah,
because we both are in long-term marriages. My wife and I are
right.
going to celebrate our 31st anniversary
We just
coming up,
celebrated our 29th, so
and so unfortunately, a lot of kids are raised in single-parent homes.
mhm.
Um,
I
but
was.
yes,
Mhm.
and even as you said, if you take that responsibility as the man, as the head of a household. Now, some people may
Mhm.
think that's a sexist statement, but I agree with you wholeheartedly there.
Hmm.
As if you're in a house with father and mother, traditionally speaking, the man is the head of the household.
Hmm.
I happen to be a Christian coming from a Christian background. Biblically speaking, the
Hmm.
man is the head of the household, and God holds the man accountable according to
Yeah.
his word.
Yeah.
You are held accountable. The wife is held accountable for other things, but
Hmm.
ultimately
The
the man is
security of the
responsible.
family is it's on us.
It's on us.
We too are,
It's on
we're a
us.
Christian
Even
household,
if
but
you're
you got to
not,
look at that.
uh, even in a non-traditional household, and I this plays out as a man, you're responsible for the well-being of your family.
This is true.
Now, life situations happen, and not life's not perfect. We had a situation with one of my children, one of my sons, where he had a child. Well, he fathered a child, you know, out of wedlock. And when he came to me with with that news, we sat down, him, my wife, myself, and it was one of the moments where you just had to get real with the situation
Yeah.
because there was no changing it.
Yeah.
In our mind, uh, this child was going to come into the world, and I was clear to him that in this particular situation, it didn't really come out of a long-term relationship.
Okay.
So I made it very clear. I said, listen, I don't expect you to necessarily have to marry this woman, but
You will
you
father this child.
will take care of your child.
Hmm.
You've done this, and this is your responsibility. And it's working out. It's working itself out. So his son's 5 years old now.
Okay.
We get him. He's around every other weekend. But uh, all that to say this, if you, we need to hold each other accountable.
Right.
You do something, you need to be held accountable. Um, Taking that back to the dojo, in the Southfield dojo in particular, I remember Sensei telling us all the time on the mat about
Yes.
controlling your technique. And when you are engaged in kumite or a sparring situation, there's two people involved, and you both have responsibility and accountability for the outcome.
Hmm.
As the aggressor, I'm responsible for the amount of force that I put into that technique,
Hmm.
and I'm responsible to make sure that it lands on the target in the manner in which I intended it to
Exactly.
do so. Now, on the other end, as you mentioned, uh, the receiver, the uki as we would call them, the tori and the
Which means
uki,
dummy. Those who don't
yeah,
know.
to receive the uki, is responsible to do his part. He's in a fight or he's
Yeah.
in a confrontation, a sparring match.
Hmm.
He's responsible to respond in like manner, to
Hmm.
defend himself in an intelligent manner, whether that be movement, blocking, ducking, any of those things.
Hmm.
But sometimes we lose sight in the dojo of control. We
Yeah.
allow our emotions to well up. We lose ourselves in the heat of what's going on. We get
Yep.
excited. There's adrenaline, endorphins, all this stuff starts happening. But
Hmm. And
that's not really
it's
acceptable.
not acceptable. Sensei, one of his favorite sayings, he's like, your technique is like a loaded gun. If your gun goes off, that gun's no good to you. You're in danger. You don't need to have that gun. If I throw this back fist at you in a non-controlled manner, if I just let it go and I do damage to you, well, it's not your fault on that end. It's my fault because I didn't control that technique. Now, on the one hand, I can say, well, you offered me the opportunity to throw this. Okay, that's true. But where it loses sight is when I lose control of what the outcome of this is going to be. You step to the angle, I step to the angle, you lowered your hand, I threw the back fist. I intend to hit you in the target. Most likely in the dojo when we're kumitain, we're going to have our headgear on. If we don't have our headgear on, we're going to lightly touch temple, jaw, neck, whatever. If I, knowing where I'm at, allow my emotions to get up, and blast this technique like I'm in the street, and I turn you into just to the common threat, then at that response, I'm taking it. I've got to own up to that. It's okay. I've hurt Vince. That's my fault.
Yeah.
We both engaged in this with an understanding that we're going to train together and use control. When I lose sight of that, now I've got to be held accountable for that. And we don't see that. You have I got my kids, one of my sons, they're doing the virtual, and we got a call from excuse me, from with the teacher. My wife got a call the other day. He hadn't done this particular math thing or whatever. So she's like, of course, when you don't want to get the wife's upset, you want to get mom upset. And she says, well, why didn't you do this? You got plenty of time. And he's got excuse after excuse. And she's like, look, bottom line, it's your responsibility. I should not get a call for this. This is on you. This is not on me. We provided the means, we provided the time. The teacher has told you the timeline. This is on you. He wants to come up with a bunch of different reasons why. Just bottom line, this is on you. Now, this particular incident, I just stood there and watched. I didn't get involved, but it's like he looked at him like, you're right. This is on you. You're accountable for your actions. Okay. I'm sorry COVID have left this the way it is. I'm sorry the traditional school is basically not happening right now. But you're accountable for the assignment you've been given. You know the rules, you know the parameters of it, you know what to do. You're accountable. And you see it all across. I look at some of my neighbors. They're young, and they're doing some interesting things, but they're basically decent guys. But sometimes they get a little bit rowdy, and it was kind of cool the other night. My son had some company come over. Him and his one of my twins, him and his girlfriend, they went out on a date. Her mom, it took them to the park for the social distance, and they got back. Well, my neighbors were having a party. Well, one of them came out the door, and I waved, and a few minutes later, he came across the street, and I'm like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Hey, he went back in the house, and he came out, and then he came across the street. He said, is that okay?" I said, "Is what okay?" He says, "Well, I saw you do the signal. I thought the music was too loud." I said, "No, I was waving at you." He's like, "Oh, I thought you." I said, "No, you guys are fine." He says, "Oh, because I know that we can get loud, and I always want to make sure that we're not going too far." I like that. And I told him, I said, "I appreciate that." But see, that showed accountability. He knows that he's having
Exactly.
a party. They can get a little rowdy, but at the same time, he's got a responsibility to the neighborhood and his neighbors to keep it down. To me, that displays great accountability. And you don't see that. You don't see that. You go to a store, you have a product with a product. You bring it to the store, they want to give you a hard time. I said, "Look, I bought this from you. I was counting on this product being good. It's not good. So now I'm bringing it back to you. It's your job to resolve this for me. It's not your job to blame me or be upset with me or come up with an excuse. Well, these products, you want to blame them. So now you want to say, oh, well, this product, if you look at it, it's really not designed for that. No, when you sold it to me, you made me think this was a come to Jesus product.
Yeah.
Now I'm coming it back to you, and all of a sudden, this is Cain marked and thrown away that you want nothing to do with. Okay, no, no. Where's the accountability for that? If you're selling something, you're accountable for the customer's appreciation and his use of that and his satisfaction with it. And if it's not, then you've got to take accountability and say, okay, you know what? I apologize. We'll refund this. Now, on your end, you send it back to the manufacturer, and that manufacturer should be held accountable for, we produced this product to this specification. We said this is what we're going to do. Unfortunately, it didn't. We're sorry. We will correct it. But you don't get that. You get this party is blaming this party, that's blaming this party, that's blaming this party, and then ultimately it'll get back to the customer.
Yeah.
Well, you obviously didn't know what you were doing when you installed it. You didn't read the instructions right. And if you do that and you continue to do that through every aspect of life, it's chaos. You get politicians. Every politician wants to say why the country is bad and why the country is falling apart. Republicans, Democrat, we touched on it last week. I've already told you, Trump is not my favorite person, but you're my president. So I've got to hold you accountable. Okay. Did you predict this pandemic? No, you did not predict it. Were there protocols in place? At one time they were. There's so many versions as to what happened. You dismantled them, they were dismantled, whatever. The bottom line, no matter it is, you're now accountable for our country's well-being. Blaming that won't help us. You got Democratic pundits who want to take advantage of the situation. Well, the country's bad because of this, country's bad because of that. How many opportunities did you have to work with your Republican counterparts? But instead of hashing it out, biting the bullet, digging in, you guys want to, you want to hurl accusations and blame this and blame that. Where's your accountability to your constituents? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and
30
kick it up a
plus
notch.
years, 40 years in office.
Yeah.
What have you done?
What have you done? What have you done?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go on and kick it up a notch, as we had mentioned this, and this is a touchy subject, but you're in the heart of it. Well, not when I say the heart, you're in the area. I look at the Breonna Taylor situation. All right, here
Yeah.
you have a situation, ladies at home with her boyfriend, suspected criminal. The police show up, enter the apartment, gunshot is fired, she's killed. I've read all the facts, I've watched the news, and bottom line is this. Bottom line is this. We don't know if they knocked, didn't knock, whatever. You got one witness is saying we heard him say police. You got multiple witnesses saying you didn't hear police. Okay. In my mind, I'm sorry, as an officer of the law who is authorized and trained in the use of deadly force, there has to be a modicum of control. When you knocked on that door, were you clear? Were you clear who you were? When you knocked in that door, were you clear of who you were? Now, Watkins, the boyfriend, he claims that we didn't hear anything. We thought they were breaking in. So I opened fire. I said, who is it? Who is it? No one answered. I opened fire. Okay. That in itself, on the one hand, if someone kicking in my door, if I don't hear you yell police or whatever, well, we're gonna use our appropriate weapons. But as the authority, I mean, 20 shots. 20 shots, and indiscriminately you're hitting other apartment buildings. I mean, this girl was okay. Yeah, you can argue the point that, well, she knew what her boyfriend was doing and she chose to be with him. Yes, she did, but she did not chose to be slaughtered in her apartment because the cops came in and planned, hey, we're going to be shoot them up. Now, I'm not saying that cops aren't in a dangerous profession. My dad's retired cop, my uncle's retired cop, a lot of our family friends are cops. I know the pressure. But they've always told me, when you go in these situations, because we are in that authority, because we know that we can kill at the drop of a hat, it's very, very important to maintain that cool in a controlled manner. It's very important. So where's the accountability in this situation? The lawyers want to say it's here. The law wants to say it's here. The government, they want to say it here. They're changing the rules. I understand now they've enacted the no announce warrant rule where you have to announce now. Honestly, I never knew that was a thing. I never knew that was a thing. That's my ignorance, but I always thought that you had to, even if it was just a quick announcement, police, open the door, we're coming in. Even on a raid, unless it's an undercover raid where it's specifically, you've routed it out, you've assessed a threat, it's imminent danger. You know that, okay, we know that they're armed. We know that Vince and his family have AKs, a mini gun set up in a living room. We know this, we've seen this, we're coming in. But on a normal, I didn't know that was a thing. So where's the accountability of that? Even the verdict. So this man is he lost his job, great, but this man is charged with random endangerment of another person, of another apartment. I mean, come on, guys, you filled this woman with holes. Whether it was intention or okay, bottom line, even if you come to me and say, we made a gravest mistake, this should not have happened, this is what we're going to do. No, it's still, well, it was his fault because he did this. It was his fault because he did that. It was his fault. Come on. Where is the accountability? And I know you're itching to say it, so I'm going to let you take it.
My understanding of the situation, being a resident of Kentucky, there's a lot of nuances in this case that I don't think get talked about nationally. So here's my take. This is me. My information and my opinion and my understanding of the facts as I've seen them or as they've been presented here. You are correct in that the police were issued a no-knock warrant. Now, my understanding of the no-knock warrant is generally it's used with violent criminals when they suspect that there might be armed response on the other side of the door. So they need to quickly enter and kind of use the element of surprise.
Which makes sense to me.
Like you pointed out, in this particular case, what I've seen on the news locally and on some national cases, the judge signed a no-knock warrant, but there was some questions about possibly the validity because, number one, Breonna Taylor and Mr. Walker, Kenneth Walker is by far the guy in this that should have been least involved, right? Because the basis of the warrant was Breonna Taylor's previous boyfriend, who was a known drug trafficker.
Right.
Right.
And they seen his car at her place. So they wanted to search her place.
Recordings of phone calls, and he was the primary target of the warrant. And they hit multiple targets that night in search of this gentleman. And hers was one of the targets on the list. I think there was 4 or 5 warrants.
I believe it was issued. 4 or 5. And just to interject this, also as I did my research, they had shown that the no-knock warrant was amended to a announce and enter warrant.
Right.
So it was changed as well.
Right. Yep. Okay. And I know that's a contentious point, but that goes back to announced or unannounced. Now the other thing that is a nuance in this particular case is what we call our castle law. And every state has them. If you're a Second Amendment person and you hear this, you need to understand what your rights are in your state, in your area, as it affects you in defending your home and property. So Kentucky has a very liberal castle law. It's a stand your ground state. Okay, we have constitutional concealed carry now. That was legally enacted here within the last year. We've been an open carry state as long as I've been here.
Right.
So, if you come on, not in my home, if you come on my property, and I think you're a threat to me in the state of Kentucky, I have a legal right to use deadly force. So, as far as Kenneth Walker is concerned, he was in every legal right to have his firearm. It was legal. And to defend his property from intruders.
Right.
So in this situation, the law enforcement officers arriving on the property obviously didn't do a really good job of announcing. So there is some accountability in that aspect. Now they arrived there to do a job, had the paperwork, but knowing the situation in Kentucky and the likelihood of,
meeting the type of resistance they were going to
on the other side. I would want to be very, very clear of who I was as a law enforcement officer coming through that door. So they forcefully entered the home. My understanding, law enforcement officers came in. Mr. Walker had already retrieved his gun and was moving toward the door when the officers came in. And he fired on them. I don't know if they were uniformed officers. I don't know if they were plain clothes.
What I understand, they were undercover. And what I've read is they were detective. They were plain clothes. They weren't wearing body cams, but that's under contention as well.
So they took fire. One of the officers was struck, and they returned fire. They were firing back and forth. I don't know when the officer got struck. I don't know when I know Kenneth Walker fired the first shots. Then it was a firefight, right? It's a firefight at that point. Yes.
Well, here's the thing, and the nuance. Everything I've said is he fired one shot, struck the officer.
I'm
not sure. Returned fire. So we will. It's like I would really wish I wish we could get a true understanding of the report because it changes the narrative. If this man fired one shot and then you opened up with a hail of bullets. Now if it's continual fire, they're going to return it. So there's so many nuance, like you said, to that we just don't know.
But let's take this back to our training in the dojo. You bring up a valid point there. One shot. How many times are you going to let a guy shoot at you, Art?
Oh,
I
no,
mean,
no, no,
we'll
no. I
send
totally,
back.
I'm not saying that. If you
You know what I'm
shoot at me
saying?
once, oh, I'm definitely shooting at you back.
Once it comes, once it's on, it's on,
Hmm.
and from the officer's perspective, and last year I had the opportunity to do some situational training with firearms.
Okay.
We started a security team in our church. I was kind of heading up that portion of it,
Hmm.
and I happen to know a guy that did firearms training that works with me in my day job. He was a retired law enforcement officer, and he taught concealed carry classes as well as some tactical training. So we did a series of I think 4 classes where it was more situational based.
Okay.
Um, and one of the first time we met, it wasn't range time, but we went through a psychology class, like the psychological aspects of using a firearm in self-defense. And again, anybody out there that is carrying a gun for self-defense, if you've purchased a firearm, put it in a drawer or put it in a purse or put it in a holster, and that's as far as you've gone, you're making a mistake.
Right.
Anything you bring into a self-defense situation can
No
be
matter
taken
what
from
it
you
is.
and used
Hmm.
against you
If
if
you
you're
don't know
not.
how to properly
Yeah,
use it.
that just goes back to our martial arts training, right?
Hmm.
If you're going to fight, you better know how to fight.
Yep.
And um, so train. That's all I'm saying.
Even
Train.
at the range, a lot of a lot of my friends and stuff, they're constantly at the range, and they're practicing. I had one of my buddies, he came over, and he carries, and he had my boys. I said, listen, guys, he's familiar with firearms. Granddad will show you whatever. He had his Glock, so he pulls it out, and he even had the wife. He says, no. So when you guys decide which ones you want to get, he went over safety step by step by step by step. He said, these are things that you have to practice constantly: unloading, unloading, reloading, checking to make sure that first round's not chambered. And he's like, because it's a serious thing. He says, you have to carry yourself differently. He says, when you're out and about and you're armed, you got to, all of a sudden, you've got to ramp up your awareness to the degree that, because I'm armed, it's going to be a feeling of, okay, now I'm ready. I can do whatever. You've got to make sure you say, you know what? But am I in my right to do whatever? Am I truly being threatened? Am I truly in a situation? He said that you've got to have accountability. If you're going to carry a gun, you better make sure that you are ready to handle the consequences should you discharge that weapon. And
Absolutely.
he talked about that a lot, and we talked about in the boys, they handled the weapon. But again, and before, I don't want to come off as to say not understanding of the adrenaline rush, because I totally support the police officers. When the one shot was fired, yeah, by all means, open fire. My whole problem with this is what precipitated that. Did you knowingly, not knowingly, did you rush into a situation which puts Walker in a situation where it's like, hey, I'm standing my ground, I'm defending myself? Or did you exercise the proper procedures to do it? And that's the question. And who's right, who's wrong? We can have our opinions on it for whatever. It all goes back to, how do we get to the point of accountability? How do we explain this to this woman's family? How do we, you can't make this up to them, to the
No,
police officers, to the law enforcement, even around the country. There's always going to be the racial connotation in that. There's a black guy, we're going to automatically assume he's violent, boom, we're going in. I'm sorry, that's the way our country perceives us. It goes all the way back to the Made in America film back in the 20s, where they depicted the Klan as rescuing everyone from the black man, and the actor they used looked like somebody out of a caveman movie. And that is the perception we have of blacks in America. I'm sorry, especially black men. We have targets on our backs. Now, some of us are deserving of that kind of fear, because a lot of us do engage in activities that are wrong, but majority of us do not. I think we touched on it before, how I can assume that because you live in Kentucky, because you carry guns, because you have that Southern drawl, which I think is cool, and because you have the acres of land, that you are secretly harboring a white supremacist group. I can assume that. I know you personally. We've shared meals together. We've been in each other's homes over the years. We fought and bled. Well, did we bleed? Yeah, we fought, bled, and broke bones together.
yeah.
So I gotta pull that back. Unfortunately, society is having a hard time doing that with us.
But
And
that's
it goes back to,
reactionary though,
it's
right?
reactionary. So you go back to accountability. What is the reason for that? It's like, okay, blacks are perceived in a negative manner. True. Why are they perceived in a negative manner? Well, for so
So
many years, this is what, the racist regime, the whatever you want to call it, they didn't want minorities, not just blacks, Asians, to some extent, the Jews, the Latinos, whatever threatens the majority at the time is going to be viewed and put into a negative light, you know? So where do you
potentially,
when do you pull back on that? At what point does the country say, you know what? Yes, we were slave owners, and yes, we did not want minorities, blacks, to have any rights because we felt you were second class citizens. Okay, it's time to move past that. At what point, how do you get past that? If a person is racist, how do you change their mind on that? How do you hold them accountable? I say, your child wasn't born with this. You taught your child how to hate. And now your hateful child just went and massacred the church. Why did a black person indirectly affect you? Did a black person indirectly affect him? You know,
yeah.
I go and kill 20 white people. Why did I do that? Did a white person
You were in
indirectly affect
Starbucks.
me? You know?
I'm just.
What did you say, what?
I said because you were in a Starbucks, but
Exactly. Because I'm in a Starbucks and you want to get that non-fat latte.
yeah,
So at what point do you stop saying, hey, society has made you, portrayed you? At what point do I say, you know what? I got to be accountable for me. I can choose to look at Vince and say, hey, dude, let's talk for a minute. Where you coming from? Okay, you're cool. Vince can look and choose me and say, hey, dude, okay, you black and you from the hood, but let me talk to you a minute. Okay, so you really can't dance. Okay,
no,
and you don't play basketball. Okay, and contrary to belief, Vince, you can jump.
yeah,
So at what point, and I think everything that's happening with law enforcement, everything that's happening with these protests is a sign and a sense of it's just like there is no accountability. And we're taking it back to the dojo, where in the dojo, you've always said it, we were a mesh of all cultures, races, religions, every possibly, I mean, we have you and we're Christians, okay? My church is not denominational. I believe yours, are
mine
you
is too. Yeah,
okay? So
I'm
we're
a Christian.
non-denominational.
No, no,
That's how we look at it. We're Christian.
that's yep. The church.
God is my Lord.
It says
Christ was
the
my Savior.
church in the book.
Exactly. We had folks who are Jewish faith. We
Yeah,
have Indian faith.
yeah,
Hinduism. You
yep.
have people
Hindus,
who are
Muslims,
Muslims.
Jews. Yep.
Yeah, you have people who, or the African religion, observe Kwanzaa and all of that. You have
Yeah.
people who are atheists. You've got
Yep.
one of the things I used to talk to Sensei about, and he says the two things, and we just had this conversation not too long ago. He says, you do not want to bring up religion and politics. He said, because then you end up having to use your techniques. Because and I like his stand, because his whole point is everyone has the right to believe what they are, and it's my responsibility to respect that right. So I got to hold myself accountable for respecting your beliefs. If I do something against you, then in the end, I've got to be able to say, this is why I did this.
Yeah.
I can't just say, well, it seemed like, and based on what I heard, I got to say, I did this, I saw this happened to me, and my experiences, you are a threat to me, and I responded to it. You know, but we've lost track of that accountability. It's easy just to say, oh, well, he looked this, so I did that. Oh, she did this, so I did that. But
Yeah.
what was the reason?
That comes back again, this is me, and we allow our emotions to drive us
Mm-hmm.
instead of our intellect.
Mm-hmm.
And again, going back to our experiences on the dojo floor,
You
that's
cannot.
one of the first things we learn is that confrontation should not be emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Once I enter into a situation, whether it be a kumite bout with a competitor at a tournament or a self-defense situation, I have to turn my emotions off and go to work.
Mm-hmm.
I give Master Woods credit for those words. Just it's work. It's
It's
not
work.
personal. If I
It's
gotta
time to go to
break you
work.
down, I gotta break you down
Mm-hmm.
because you made a bad decision.
Right.
You're accountable for what happens to you now.
Right.
I'm not gonna initiate this, but you cross that line. Now
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna do what's necessary.
Mhm.
Not that I don't like you, or
Mhm.
not that, it's just the facts. I had to
It's
flip the
the
switch,
facts.
and
Mhm.
here we are on the dark side.
Yep.
So, again, I think the whole racism thing, and again, I'm a white guy, grew up in a northern suburb of Detroit, Hazel Park,
Mhm.
and never actually went to school with anybody of color. So, I was ignorant of a lot of things. I didn't
Mhm.
have a lot of interaction. I was fortunate that my parents weren't racist. They worked in the automotive industry, so they
Mhm.
worked with people of color. They had
Mhm.
daily interaction. But it all starts in the home.
Yeah.
It's
You're
not
taught
learned.
this.
You can see that so quickly in children. You
Yes,
go
you
to a
can.
public place and you watch small children play together,
Mhm.
they absolutely do not display any form of
Discrimination.
discrimination from,
This is a kid.
it is
This
a
is someone my
learned
age, and I'm
activity.
playing with you.
Yeah, it is a learned behavior
Mhm.
by absolutely learned behavior.
I
Uh,
always love quoting people, and one of my favorite artists, Prince, who I miss dearly, as if he was a personal friend. But his one song, and I love this one line in this particular song. It says, "No child is born bad; they only imitate their atmosphere." And
Absolutely.
that is so true. Children only do what they've seen, heard, or been shown to do. And it's weird because if our kids go out and act a fool to a degree, if we
Yeah.
know in our heart we've taught them properly, we've disciplined them, we've educated them, we've shown them, and then I'm accountable for that. But if you choose to go out and do something stupid, now you're accountable because you knew better. I know for a fact you knew better.
Yeah, at a certain
That's what's
point,
happening.
they're
But if
accountable for
if
their
I
actions.
don't if I don't introduce you, like I take my kids, we always put them in situations with, when they were younger, they were in the preschool we wanted to go to. We found they were only two little black kids in there.
Yeah.
But we researched it, we talked with everyone, and we realized that despite this fact, the people there were warm, friendly people. There was never any racial problems. They grew up around multicolors. We try to put them in activities where you're going to encounter people of your own color, but people of other races and creeds. There's always going to be the questions, and then I try to responsibly answer the questions. My wife responsibly answers the questions. So they've grown up knowing it's a twofold thing. One, they've grown up knowing that this is a world of multiple people,
Gotta get
and
along.
two, they've grown up knowing that as a black person in this world, you are at a certain level of danger because of the racism that surrounds you. So they grow up knowing that I have to conduct myself different. My boys know. My boys are big. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'3", 220 pounds. My kids are big. They're black men. They wear braids. Okay. They're like hoodies. Because of the perceived image of that, they
Yeah.
know that when you're in public, stand up straight, get your hands out your pocket. You cannot present a threat. You have to carry it. Is it unfair? Yes, it's totally unfair. They should be able to walk down the street, hand in their pocket, being however they want, and not be seen as, oh wow, okay, what's going on here? Police officer, you fit the profile. They should be able to do that, but unfortunately, they can't. They're aware of this. It was my responsibility to make them aware of this. Now, if I just sent them out thinking whatever, and the situation comes on, they're in a racial situation, they don't know how to deal with it, well, then that's on me because I've got to be held accountable to make sure they understand the politics of America. Now, are the politics changing? Yes. Slowly, people are coming together. Me and you are proof of that. Like you
Yeah.
said, two very different guys trying to put a little positivity into the world for a change without using these, which we love to use if we have to. But it's my responsibility just as it's your responsibility. I love that you went back to the situation with your son. You taught him what to do and what not to do. He chose to, do this. You said, okay, fine, I will accept this, but it's your responsibility. He steps up to the plate, he's taking care of his son. So again, it's your job initially to instill that. Once you get to a point, it's their job to take what you've given them. And that's where you go back to the dojo. It was Sensei's job Master Wood's job, Master Maven's job, you know, Sensei Stevenson, you know, Mrs. Adams, Miss Master Adams. I always get confused what to call her because I say Mrs. Adams, but then I say, well, I want to say Master Adams because you're a master too. But they instill those values that, hey, you're in here to learn how to fight, but you're also in here to learn how to be respectful. You're in here to learn how ultimately to control yourself. You know, Master Woods always had that thing where when you're in a fight, it's like a dance. Now, depending on who leads, that's going to determine the fate of this dance. You know,
Yeah.
if I step up and you step up and I get in there and make that move, or we dance in the mock move, we dance in the R&B. Now, if you get in and you immediately make the move and you take control, okay, then now we got to dance to country western. So bottom line, you've got to maintain control. You got to maintain control. You got to establish that control. But it's a give and take. Okay. At what point do you say to yourself, okay, I'm gonna push against this, but I've also got to take responsibility and say, well, maybe they see this because of this. So what am I doing to project this? If you can honestly look at yourself, a lot of situations you get in, if you can honestly look at yourself and honestly answer those questions, Vince, after 31 years, I know you and your wife. Okay, my wife and I love this woman. Okay, this woman is amazing. She's
Love does
amazing.
not necessarily guarantee no
Exactly.
conflict.
She's amazing for the fact that she gave me 3 wonderful sons, and she's amazing for the fact that she puts up with me. But we have a saying that the two of us we do. It's like, I always love you, but I don't always like you. But we're in those situations when she's making the points. I can be angry, whatever, and it really makes her angry because a lot of times she'll be yelling, fussing. I'll just do this. I'll just shut it down because that's my training, just to shut it down. So you think I'm not responding. I am responding by taking my emotions out of it. But then at that point, I'm thinking, she's coming at me with this. Is this reasonable? Am I accountable? Is she right? Did I do this? And a lot of times out of 10, you realize, you know what? She is right. And my pride doesn't want it to be that way. But my common sense says, yeah, I'm accountable for this. So now I've got to change this to spark this reaction. If the world could do that, like you say, if you take a moment, take a pause, and ask yourself, okay, this situation is happening. Why is this happening? And am I directly the result of this? Did I do something to directly result it? Now, if you can honestly say, no, I did not do this. This is unmasked aggression against me. Again, it goes back to this is a threat. Now it's time for me to eliminate the threat. It's time to go to work.
Yeah.
You know, enter that. But if you can't and honestly say, well, yeah, I could have done this a little different. That's what sparks the change, and that's how we grow, you know.
And
But
you'll not change the past.
you won't
We can
change it.
only change the future, right?
That's all you can
We have to
change.
learn from our
Yeah,
mistakes. We can't undo what's been done, but we
yeah,
can change what happens in the future.
right.
And one of the tools that we use at work in problem resolution or problem solving is to simply question why, right?
Yes.
The 5 why, we call it the 5 why principle. If you want to get to the root cause of any problem,
Mm-hmm.
you ask why at least 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
More often than not, you'll get to the actual cause.
Right.
So if we have a customer return or a safety issue or something like that, we try to apply 5 why analysis. A good one of the teaching tools for the 5 why analysis is the story of a king who lost his kingdom. So 2 kings go to battle and they deploy their armies down into this valley.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one king dispatches one of his generals and to bring in some troops. Well, the troops never arrive. So he's defeated and he loses his entire kingdom. When you start breaking that problem down and look at what occurred, the king dispatched his general. The general was supposed to go bring in other troops. What happened? Well, the message never arrived. Why did the message not arrive? His horse went lame en route. Why did his horse go lame?
Mm-hmm.
The horse threw a shoe. Why did the horse throw a shoe? Well, the furrier only put 4 nails in the shoe instead of 5.
Mm-hmm.
Why did he only use 4 nails? because there was a shortage of nails. So for want of a nail,
You
the
lost the
king
kingdom.
lost his kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
But those small decisions or those small factors that we do every day have great consequences potentially.
Right.
In you think about the ocean. Where does a wave start? Well, a tsunami or whatever.
Right.
It all depends on the topography. On the surface, it's just a ripple. But as it gets
Mm-hmm.
closer to shore, it can be a great wave.
It gathers strength.
So accountability, if you navigate your life never thinking about being accountable for your actions,
Right.
you're going to be a reckless individual. We talked about our homes. When my kids were small and living at home and coming up, I always told them we like to keep our family close and keep our family tight, kind of like you do. Keep an eye. So and rather than have our kids go out everywhere or be with other people, we always encourage them, bring your friends home.
Same here.
Our doors are open.
This is the Kool-Aid house. Believe me, it's the
But I
Kool-Aid
made it
house.
very clear to my children that when you bring an individual into my home, I'm holding you responsible. You're accountable for the way they act.
That's right.
Now, if it's extreme, yeah, I'll deal with them. But when I'm done with them, I'm coming to you. Yeah, I'm coming to you.
Mm-hmm.
So you better know who you're bringing into my home.
Mm-hmm.
If they're going to steal from me, if they're going to disrespect my home, if they're going to break my stuff, that's not acceptable.
Yeah.
And I'm going to deal with them. Then I'm going to deal with you.
Mm-hmm.
So fortunately, we didn't have no instances where it had to come to that level. But you ask my kids, they'll tell you, because I was adamant. Can so and so come to my house? Yep, not a problem. But you know the deal, right?
You know the deal.
They act foolish, I'm coming to you. So
that's teaching them though, but that is such a great thing, because you're accountable for the safety of the family and the well-being of the home. But by showing them that, you're teaching them that they have to be accountable as well. It's multi-stages. And that is such an important step to child. I mean, anyone can claim to be a parent. Okay, you're a parent. Once you have a child,
it's
you're
easy to make
you're biologically
children.
a parent.
Hard to raise children.
You're biologically a father. But are you a true father? A true father nurtures his sons. I was told that it's the mother's job to coddle the child and the father's job to break the child down so that they can be prepared. All right. I take that very, very, very seriously. My wife tells me all the time, she says, you are so regimented with them. You are so harsh with them. But I'll be honest, my boys, I love my boys, and each of them in their own way, we have our own relationships. They tell me everything. They never hesitate when they have a problem. Even my oldest, he's going through his thing. He's with his girlfriend, and he's trying to figure out what he wants to do with his life. And believe me, my wife and I are disagreeing a lot on the direction. And to a lot of degree, it's me. I've allowed him to do certain things, but he is making his choices. Okay. But he comes to me and, Dad, this and that. And one thing I always tell him, dude, son, remember, no matter what choice you make, if it's not the right choice, never let your pride keep you from coming back. Because as your dad, I do believe that the men of the house, the fathers, we have to be that true north, that one fixed point. Again, me in movies, I go back Pacific Rim, Idris Elba, he's arguing with his troops, one of the troops, and he says, my only job is to be that one fixed point that everything can revolve around, whether you hate me for it or not. As a parent, as a dad, I've got to be that one fixed point. If something does not go wrong, I've got to be the one my wife can come to and say, this is happening, blah, blah, blah. I've got to say, you know what, as the man of the house, you're right. How do I rectify this? The buck has to stop with me. As a father, same thing. As a worker on my job, I work on the line, as I said. If I'm not getting that job done, it's up to me to figure out why. Now, this happened. Why didn't you get this done? Because of this, because of this, because of this. So that if I come to you, the foreman, whatever, and say, hey, I'm not getting this done because of this, this, and this, you better believe I'm going to have a detailed reason as to why I'm not getting this done. Now, it's your job as the boss to say, okay, you've explained it to me. I see this. You've shown it to me. Now it's my job to get it fixed. So my accountability initially has to discover the problem, as you said. Now it's up to you. Your accountability has to, and we have to go forward. It's okay if you're responsible for something. I don't fault the man for what he did wrong. If he
Yeah.
did it wrong, you knew you shouldn't have did it wrong. I get that. What
Just
are you
own
going to
it.
do to make it right?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't change the fact that at our first tournament, you won. I can't change that fact. Okay. You won. But what I could change was that in our future engagements, I was going to train hard, learn your strengths, learn your weaknesses, so that the next time you were going to have a harder time winning. And as a
Exactly.
result of that, we grew together. We grew
Yeah.
together. I'm not going to come at you in a sense of anger because bottom line, it was my fault that you won because I was a little lax. I didn't train as hard for that tournament as I should have trained. So now it's up to me to bring myself up. It's me. I'm held accountable. So now we've grown up and we're training hard and we're good fighters. And same thing with you. When you would lose a tournament, I could tell if you would come back from a tournament because I didn't do all the ones that you did. I can always tell if you didn't do good because all of a sudden it's like, why are you throwing this reverse punch at me 50,000 times? Because you knew that this was a technique that you needed to work it out. I could always tell if you felt something was lacking in your technique because you would just come and just work it and work it and work it because you held yourself accountable. You're like, hey, this didn't happen because I should have been doing this. I was told to do this. I was taught to do this. I was showed how to do this. I chose not to do it. And now there's a weakness. There's a chink in my armor. You
And
held
that was
yourself
always our
accountable.
lesson. That was
Yeah.
always our lesson on the mat was it's okay to lose.
Mm-hmm.
It's not okay to lose the same way twice.
That's right.
That was
That's right.
Sensei's
That
mantra.
was Sensei led.
And
It's okay.
what
It's okay to
I tell
lose.
my students constantly, we win or we learn.
Right.
The only losers are the people who don't show up,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm. You
And
got to show up, and you can't expect to win in everything. You can't expect to
no,
be successful in everything. You know,
but
my
you take
kids
it as
tell
a
me,
lesson.
man, they teach me things. You know, I do my YouTube channel, the Rants with Leo, where I do my Leo voice and I do the rants. And you know, some of my videos they hardly get any views, but my son, they're like, Dad, remember, you started this because you like imitating folks, and you do this. You're not going to expect to be successful overnight. You got to just take your time. Keep doing it for the reasons you do it. And what's hilarious is that these are the same words I use on them.
Right. Good, they're listening.
But it's wonderful to see that because I was accountable to try to teach them, that they've taken my lessons and now they feel that, well, it's up to us to make sure that mom and dad kind of, now
Yeah.
there's varying degrees of respect with parents. And of course, you always gonna have to smack them around a bit. But overall, it's great to take responsibility and teach your kids something. And
Yeah.
it's great for them to take that and go because hopefully if more folks did that in a positive manner, because I'm sorry to say what we when we swing it back around with the racisms and the hate groups and on both ends of the spectrum, if all I taught my kids were that white folks aren't to be trusted, it's just that simple, then I'm creating a situation of hate that who knows what that's going to lead to. But if I teach my kids some white people are not to be trusted, some black people are not to be trusted, some Asian people are not to be trusted, what you have to do, maintain your dignity, look at the situation, and then determine if you can trust that person.
Yeah.
Now I've created a situation where it's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to go through life and I'm going to look and carefully surround myself and carefully navigate. Then I will know if this is a threat. Now I know I'm within my rights to totally neutralize it because this was a threat. I looked into it. It's a threat. Done.
Yeah.
But just
One,
to assume it,
that's a great point. And, bringing that first and foremost, again, back to our core, our training, and what I tell my students, especially my teenagers and adults, the first technique of self-defense, or the first technique of self-defense, is not get in a situation where you have to defend yourself in the first place.
Exactly.
Right? Avoid the confrontation. How do you avoid the confrontation? By controlling your surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
If I choose to go out with, my buddies to a place where there's going to be alcohol being consumed, the likelihood of conflict is going to rise, right?
Exponentially.
If I go to a club and I notice on the way in I'm paying a cover charge and there's 6 big goony bouncers there, those guys are on the payroll for a reason.
Right.
They're there because there's trouble, and they're going to
Mhm.
have to handle that trouble.
Mhm.
So I need to know I don't need to be there.
Right.
If I'm in there and something happens, I have some accountability for making my choice to be there. The signs were there that I've been places where going in, the guys pat you down at the door. You got any
Mhm.
guns? You got any knives?
Mhm.
It's happened before, obviously, or they wouldn't be checking me.
They're not there just because
You
they
know,
look good.
Yeah.
You know.
Nope. That's just basic business. You
Mhm.
don't pay for things that you
Right.
don't need.
Or
Right.
and I can honestly say there could be there as a deterrent because they know that because I'm going to be serving alcohol, because there's going to be heightened emotions from dancing,
Yeah.
because these ladies are going to be in here looking all kind of way, that I'm going to put these guys here. I'm going to instigate these rules so that I don't have that problem. Even then, I have to say, has there been trouble? Nope. And this is why we do this, so there won't be.
Maybe. Yeah.
So,
But
you
yeah.
have to, like you say, but again, then you have to make the decision. Well, this could potentially be something. Do I want to take this risk? Do I feel
Right. Is
comfortable
this
enough
really
going
where I
here?
belong?
Yeah,
Is this really where I belong?
yeah.
So
And if it's not, then leave.
yeah, then leave. Yeah.
It goes back to our defensive forum, talking about perceiving the threat. If I perceive a threat, my training has taught me how to handle that. The first thing to do is remove myself out the situation if possible.
Yeah.
Threats eliminated. But I do that by understanding what a threat is to me. A threat to me is anything that makes you uncomfortable or potentially puts you in danger. Not necessarily physical danger, but maybe emotional or mental danger. There are certain shows, my son, my youngest, we watch a lot of TVs. There are certain shows or movies that he does not like because they give they give him nightmares. And I tell him, I said, when you look at something and you say, okay, this is going to be something that's going to bother me, do not be ashamed of that, because you're holding yourself accountable for your mental well-being. You're holding yourself accountable to prevent a threat. Don't be ashamed of that.
No.
Same thing. There's certain shows that I want to watch the Joker. I really, really want to watch that Joker. But I'm a person who has heightened anxiety, OCD, and with this pandemic going on, my mind is all over the place. So on a daily, I'm doing my meditations to calm down. So I know that, this is not a time for me to watch a psychological based program because I know what my triggers are. So I got to hold myself accountable for my well-being. You can't just assume that, okay, I'm going to do what I want. Boom. Because like you said, you lead a reckless life. And then not only do you lead a reckless life, you leave a wave of destruction behind you. A tidal wave leaves a wave of destruction behind it. It does. It does. You don't want to be that tidal wave.
Right. You may not be guilty of the actions or whatever occurs. You mentioned talking to your sons, and same thing with my children when they were coming up and they started, getting to the point where they were going out with their friends and being out away from home with their friends. Who you're with makes a difference.
It makes a
Don't
difference.
surround yourself with people who are in constant trouble.
Yeah.
You may not be the one that started it, but
you
guess
may
what?
be the one that gets the brunt of it.
You may be the one that gets in brunt of it.
Yeah.
When a situation pops off and you're there with the guy that started it, you're probably going to share some of the blame from the people around. You brought that guy to the party or whatever, or heaven forbid, the laws involved. You go out with somebody and in a vehicle and they drink and drive and there's an accident and maybe they were behind the wheel and you weren't.
You were still in the car.
You still have a little bit, you're not to blame, but you have some accountability because you allowed that situation to occur. Unless you're handcuffed and in the trunk,
right?
You have some accountability, and people need to think about that. You got to really soak that in, and it's hard at times. So you take it inch by inch, bit by bit, right? You like eating an elephant, one bite at a time, and you
Well, it's
start
like you
young.
say, it's not a sprint. It's a
No, you
long,
start
it's a
young.
marathon.
So in my dojo, for example, in my dojo, this happens all the time in my little kids classes. Uh, People leave their gear behind or their belt or something on the mat, you know.
Yes.
So my rule is if I pick it up, it goes in my office, right? And
Hmm.
when we meet each other again, I'll give it back to you one time. One time. That one's free. If I ever pick up something of yours again, you have to buy it back. And you're going to buy it back with sweat,
Hmm.
right? It's going to be push
Hmm.
ups, sit ups, wall sits. You're
Hmm.
going to give me something in order to get that back. The other thing that I am really stern about is having your stuff when you come to class. You
Yeah.
know, again, more with my younger students, but you come to class and you don't have your obi, you get on the mat and say, "Well, my mom didn't put it in my bag." Negative.
Exactly.
Mom ain't taking martial arts
That's
classes.
right. And you
You
know the
are.
Obi is part of your uniform.
Yeah, mom is providing this for you,
Hmm.
but this is your training.
Hmm.
You know, I expect you to be responsible.
Yeah.
So in 30, I don't know what, 20 something, almost 30 years of martial arts training, my wife may have washed my gi once or twice.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
not because she doesn't do a good job with the laundry, but
It's my
take
gi.
it, it's my gi, my responsibility. And
Hmm.
honestly, if she were to ever mess it up, it would be conflict. So
Yeah.
rather than have conflict, I assume the responsibility of doing it myself.
Hmm.
You know, if she ever threw a red shirt in with my, and I come out with a pink gi,
Hmm.
it'd be problematic.
Hmm.
Or she threw my obi in the washer by accident or whatever.
Hmm.
We'd have problems.
Yep.
So I just do it. It's just something
Mine
that
was
I
the
do.
same thing with us. My wife,
But
she even says it. She says, "I'm not going to touch your gi because I know it's important." So
yeah,
now it's my responsibility to make sure that gi is fresh, make sure that gi is clean.
and if
My
it
gi,
isn't,
the bottom of
know
my
who's to
pant leg
blame.
has a rip on it,
Yeah.
and I don't sew it. And people ask me, "Why don't you ever sew that?" The reason I don't sew it is because that rip was a valuable lesson I learned from from Master Early. Years back, we were fighting, and I'm doing squat kicks. Master Early is the squat kick. I mean, he's the squat kick maestro. And so I'm kicking and kicking and kicking. And one of the things Sensei always says is, make sure you cut your toenails. Make sure that you're, well, in this particular time, I did a kick and I ripped his gi, one of his custom gis. And he stopped, he gave me this look. I knew I was about to get hurt. Right then, Master Wood said, "Okay, us everybody line up." So I was excited. I'm gonna get out of here. When he dismissed us, Master Elliot said, "Sensei, can I get a few more minutes with Gully?" Well, Sensei, yeah, Mel, go ahead. Let's just say he went up the left side of me, came down the right side of me, because one, you didn't cut them toenails. Two, you threw that crazy technique. And three, you told my gi. You didn't have to say it, but I knew why. So
You
every
why?
time I look at my gi, I always stop and it makes me think of, have I done everything to prepare myself for this situation? Because the outcome, because I was too lazy to cut my toenails, and because I did not properly set that kick to retract it the way I should have, I got beat down. And it reminds me of that. We've got at Southfield, like I say, I try to help Sensei when I can. He allows me to work with some of the junior black belts. And with this, I got to have this hip replacement soon. So my katas look hilarious. And Sensei's like, "Look, it doesn't matter as long as you can't raise your leg, but if you can kick that person in the ankle, just use your technique." A lot of times in the Southfield Dojo, there's a back room, and the junior black belts are back there, and a lot, they're back there clowning and clowning or whatever. And I went back there, and I looked, and one day I just said, "Fellas, line it up." I said, "First of all, I'm not going to yell at you because you're back here acting crazy and all this stuff. My thing is this: what is that around your waist? What is that around your waist?" And they're like, "Well, we were black belt." I said, "Exactly. Sensei put that around your waist because he felt that you had trained and earned it." I said, "So now that you're wearing that," I said, "I have this on my waist. I take this responsibility very seriously as a black belt, as a sensei. I take that responsibility. The fact that Master Adams, Master Woods felt I was good enough to teach their students, tells me that I've got to step it up. I said, the fact that Sensei says you are good enough to become a black belt in my school, you have got to represent that, which means that other Qs coming in, they need to look and say, okay, those black belts, they're training, they're working hard. This is it. I said, so bottom line, you got to show that. You got to be, that's what I said, is you got to be responsible for your behavior. Now, what are you back here doing? You know, so they lined up, we started going over stuff, and it made them think. They're like, yeah, but yeah, we're black belts. We're black belts. You know, I'm not going to yell at you and scream at you and you need to do this, you need to do this. No, I'm going to take it back to your accountability. You are now this, which means you have a responsibility. You are accountable for your actions and the way you are perceived. It's up to you now because you were given this black belt. You don't just walk in and say, here's a black belt. No, you got to earn that. You got to train. You got to show up. You got to learn. You got to study. You got to get beat down. You know, you got to give some beat downs. You got to earn that. And once you earn it, you've got to say, okay, I'm a black belt. That means something. Just like a doctor. When a doctor gets all those degrees, does all that studying, gets that license, you know, he is responsible now.
Yeah.
He is responsible. You are accountable for those patients you treat. You are responsible telling them every possible way. Now, medicine is not an exact scientist, but you are responsible for telling them that too. We're going to do this, and this based on what we can do. These are the outcomes we want. This could be the outcome. You know, I will do everything I can to make sure we get the favorable one. You're accountable. You're not accountable for nature not agreeing with you, but you are accountable for at least telling the person the full brunt of everything. You're accountable for whatever it is that you do in life. Ultimately, you are accountable. If you want to have a good life, you better hold yourself accountable, because if you don't, like you said, you're going to live a reckless life, and then you're going to be that tidal wave that's just wreaking havoc.
Yeah.
Just that simple.
You can't hold people accountable for things that is outside their control.
Right.
You know, especially say physical attributes or natural occurrences. It's not my fault it rains. It's not your fault it rains. If it's raining outside and I'm having a bad day, I shouldn't take that out on you. You didn't cause it to rain.
You didn't cause it to rain.
Likewise, you had no input on who your parents were. You had no input on the color of your skin. Neither did I. We were born into our situations.
Mm-hmm.
We've developed into the people we are because of the situations that we were in and the choices that we were made.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I can hold you accountable for are your actions. The only thing I should hold you accountable for, I should say, as a reasonable person, are your decisions and your actions. And right now, our country's in a very terrible place because we get these reactionary events happening because of media primarily, and people not taking the time to try to get below the surface. You know, it's easy for me to throw something out there and you have an emotional reaction.
It is.
And not understand all the nuances of the situation that occurs. Whether it's, you know, again, we live in the United States of America. We're blessed. We are so blessed to live in this country. And people have every right in the world to voice. We have First Amendment, freedom of speech, right? I ought to be able to say my convictions to an open audience, just like we're doing here. And whether you agree with me or disagree with me, just listen.
Right.
I don't have the right to put my hand on you, but freedom of speech is fine. And in the country today, you know, in regard to protest, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
People want to come out and protest. We have problems. That's how you deal with problems. You have to bring them to the surface.
You got to expose it.
Yeah, hidden problems never get resolved. This country is far from perfect. People are far from perfect. The world would be a great place if it didn't have people in it.
That's
you know, we screw it up, but it'd be a different place. You know, when protest turns to rioting, though, and destruction of private property,
That's a breakdown of communication, and
that's a
that
breakdown of communication. And
you have no
again,
progress from that.
the account of the business owners that are being affected
Mm-hmm.
and the communities that are being affected by the violence
Mm-hmm.
and the destruction had very little, if anything, to do with whatever the crowd was
Situation is.
protesting at the time.
It is.
There's been some terrible things happen over, the last 6, 7. There's been terrible things happening throughout history, but in particular, the last few months,
it's been a lot of horrid stuff.
a lot of horrid stuff. And with the COVID situation, people are just on edge. It's a stressor, so everybody's on edge, and it's terrible. But what people, if you're involved or want to be involved in a situation like this, you need to understand you're accountable, or should be accountable for your actions.
Right.
Whether it's the person throwing a brick through a window, or a law enforcement officer knocking down a 78-year-old man.
Exactly. You're accountable for the way
reason.
you responded to that.
Yeah, the way that you responded. And just kind of full circle to the Breonna Taylor incident, I in no way try to justify the outcome of that incident.
Right.
But at some point, there was a legal warrant issued that had her name, her address. There was no mistake on where they should have been.
Mm-hmm.
The reason was her ex-boyfriend and their conversations together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, I'm not justifying any of that, but I take this back to what I said earlier about who you choose to spend your time with.
Right.
Make wise choices.
You have to.
Don't hang out with thugs. You should have less interaction with the law. And that goes for everybody. I tell my kids that, I tell my students that. And as a rule, just through life, you become a sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with.
You do.
They influence you.
You do. I walked away from many friends. I had a childhood friend, and we were tight, man. We were tight. As we got older, I grew up on over there at Joy Road, Greenfield, where the YBI started. There was a lot of drug trafficking going on. As we grew older, my friend started hanging with a rougher crowd. I couldn't be around him anymore. And our friendship, it went its way. And I regret that, but I couldn't do it. His life turned into, I reconnected with his sister, and she, I was living, how you do Facebook years later, you try to find everybody. And I had really been looking for him, and I found his sister, and she told me that he had just passed away from, he had a heart attack. But the sum of his life involved substance abuse, crime. Back then I saw the direction he was headed. And one of the things we talked, she says her parents, she would say, well, maybe if he had stayed friends, because I was always, the straight narrow kid, I was always the serious kid, maybe it could have been an influence. And I think that, but at the same time, you can only influence someone who wants to be influenced.
Right.
My oldest son, he cracks me up because he had a couple of core friends that he would hang with, and my wife would always say, well, don't you want to invite this person or this person? And he's like, you know what, I really don't. He says, because first of all, one of our rules is if we meet you, we want to meet your parents. First of all, I need to know what type of environment my child is going into if they're coming to your house. If you have weapons, are they secured? You don't got to tell me everything you got, but I need to know they're secured. What type of substance is going on? Who people visiting your house? And my son would say, well, Dad, his mom cusses and drinks a lot, and we don't do that. And then they do this. He says, honestly, I don't really want those people over. I don't mind hanging out with them at school, but I don't really want to go anyplace with them because they want to do this. That's just not what I want to do. And as a result, he kept his core friends minimal. And now he's got 1 or 2 friends who he talks to, and he's got his girlfriend, of course. But he knew that. He says, I know that I got to keep myself in a position where I'm not involved in nothing like that because it makes me safe. And I'm proud of that. And my other boys are the same way. They're like, nope, this person, they're not coming to our house. Now, the youngest twin, I don't know if you ever watched The Mentalist. There's a character named Cho on The Mentalist who is just like straight up, no nonsense, That's my youngest. And he'll tell you in a minute, it's like such and such and such. No, they're not coming here. If you're in this house, you're like, yo, bro, look, you either straighten it up or you got to go. He don't play. He does not play. He does not play. It's like, no. The other twin is a little bit more congenial with it, but he still is the same way. I don't think I want to do that. I'd rather not have this person here.
Yeah.
We don't want to be around them because this is going on, you know. And I'm glad I was able to instill a little bit of, you got to be accountable for your own actions. You can't control the other things around you often, but you can control how you respond to it, and you can control of what you put yourself into to a degree.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
basically, that's what it comes back, bringing it full circle like we always do, which is the point of this. We were blessed to have that core training where we were taught that because we're learning, Sensei Phillips, Master Phillips always says it, this is a martial art, which means you are learning martial, you are learning war, you are learning violence. So as a
Military
result,
skills.
you have to be able to control yourself because what you're learning is potentially fatal. So you got to be able to control yourself, So we were blessed to have a system of learning that instilled discipline, and it instilled a need for us to maintain discipline, maintain control, maintain order, and hold ourselves accountable so
Yeah.
that we can give that to our kids, and hopefully they'll give it to their kids. And like you said, one little lesson at a time, one little step at a time, one little moment at a time, maybe the world can change if we start holding ourselves accountable. Let's stop blaming so much and look at our situations and say, okay, what can I do to change this? And what have I done to cause this? And if I can be honest with myself and accept the fact that we're not perfect, I'm so far from perfect. I always tell people, you think you're perfect? Really? Run across that water. Then we can talk.
Yeah. And hold each other accountable.
Yes.
We're humans, we're fallible, but you
Yes.
don't have to be silent,
Mm-mm.
within your circle of influence.
Mm-hmm.
Hold each other accountable. And that
Yeah.
was one great thing we had in the dojo. Like you said, we
Yeah.
were very fortunate to come up in a place where we had a large group of people, and of a diversity, a very large diversity of cultures and people and careers. And
Yeah.
but they held each other accountable. And you can do that within your family, you can do that on your job site,
With your
and
friends.
with your friends in school. When somebody makes a mistake, I shouldn't say a mistake, when somebody makes a bad decision,
Mm-hmm.
when a conscientious bad decision, tell them about it. You don't
Yeah.
have to be rude about it, but
Yo.
just a lot of times, if it goes unchecked, goes unspoken,
Mhm.
it's encouraging.
Right.
I work with a wonderful lady named Pat Young, and when we finish a meeting, her final comments are always, silence is acceptance. Does anybody have anything to add? Nobody says anything, she'll say silence is acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And
And that's beautiful.
there's no more truth than that.
Yeah.
If somebody does, poor behavior in your presence and you don't check it,
You're accepting it.
then you're acknowledging that that's acceptable.
And then you get to a point where that distaste for that behavior, it builds and builds. Now something sets you off, it triggers you, you respond in a way that's totally disproportionate to the
Yeah.
original behavior. Whereas if you just said, case in point, my neighbors years ago, I told them, I
Yeah.
said, guys, sometimes you're a little loud, let's kind of remember. And I was like, we're in the neighborhood, blah, 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 blah. Flash forward a few years. Hey, Art, we good? Everything okay? Because I went to them as a man. They came to me. You know what? You're right, Art.
Yeah.
We're going to hold ourselves accountable. Okay. Do they do stuff that all the time? No. But for the most part, everyone tries to get along because, like you said, you weren't silent about it. You said, hey, guys, this is this and this. Okay. Now, if you respond in a very negative way and it doesn't work that way, well, now you've become a threat. And as you well know, I will
Yeah.
deal with that threat.
Well, however
But
that happens, yeah. Now we
yeah,
know our boundaries, and we may have to
right.
part company.
Yeah. Or like you
So,
say, may have to go to work.
may have to go to
But
work.
we don't ever want that.
No.
And I think that is like the best thing to say. And I think we've been running pretty long here. I think
Yeah.
we should end it that way.
Yep.
Before we do, of course, as always, we want to give thanks to our masters. Over the years, we've had really multiple men and women who have just really trained and instilled in us and sometimes beat us down. So we thank all of those from Grandmaster Adams on down, Master Woods, Mrs. Adams, Master Maben, Master Phillips, Miss Sue Stevenson. She used to work with me so much back in the day. Sensei Ellis from the time, Doc Rosema, who is the man to go to if you want those sneaky techniques. All of these people, Master Carl Martin, Master Lovelace, Sensei Lovelace, all of these folks have just come together and given us so much. To this day, Master Early, when we talk, it's so cool. We'll sit there, he'll come in from work late, and he says, I know I'm getting here too late to get on this mat, but I still got to get in here to this dojo because I'm always going to get something. He's showing me there, no matter how high you are. And this man is in the Issue Hall of Fame and everything. He still holds himself accountable for his training because he knows that this is how he progresses. And Vince, you hold me accountable. I've often held you accountable over the years, and I really appreciate that. So everyone, remember Vince's word: silence is acceptance, and we don't want to accept badness. We want to hold ourselves accountable, and we want to move forward.
Absolutely. And I've been very blessed to have so many great people that have helped me along in my martial arts career. And again, that's kind of where we're coming at this from our martial arts worldview. And that's a lot of things that people don't get from the outside looking in is the community. And even within that community, one of the things that I think we're blessed with is that accountability. We try to hold ourselves accountable. And, whether it's my first instructor, who is also a family member, my cousin Bob Steins, who I still train with weekly, now, even though it's via Zoom, but, he's always holding me accountable for my actions and my decisions. And Dole Sieber, same thing. The, gentleman I train with now in Ishner here in Tennessee. But, we got that base there in Southfield, and I think that's a great place to look at because of it's so unique. I feel so blessed to have been a part of that situation there. It's such a neat ecosystem to yes. be, it's just a great place, especially at that point in my life as a 20-year-old man, coming into that, kind of where you're really starting to develop your psyche and your worldviews. It was just really, really good timing. Yeah. So, yeah. Silence is acceptance. We're responsible for what goes on around us. We're, responsibility, accountability, same thing. Do your part. That's all I can say. Do your part. Silence is acceptance. And you don't have to be a part of the madness. It's geometric progression, right? If I can influence one person and they can influence one person, we can grow from that.
Yeah. So and really, like you say, it's not a sprint. It's a long haul.
Yep.
Try to influence one outcome at a time.
Yep. So with that, I guess we'll end it this week and hit it again another time.
All right, Vince, as always, man, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a good week. We'll do it again soon.
You too. Bye. Train hard, everybody. Stay safe out there.